Hi, Paul here from the future. Well, not like your future, but like future in relation to the past Paul that you're about to hear in this episode. Technically, I'm a past Paul, but like a more recent to your present past Paul. Anyway, I'm interrupting my own first two episodes to share just a little bit of a caveat. These episodes are produced together, and while in format they resemble the other episodes, they're much more of a discussion and exploration into solo RPGs than they are like an actual play recording. Feel free, of course, to continue to listen to these. You get some background on why I made the decisions in the first couple episodes of my actual play that I did, what rule system I'm kind of using. It hasn't been really impactful, I'll say, and I ended up changing the rules anyways. Regardless, if you're looking to kick off the actual play, you're welcome to skip ahead to episode 3 and then listen forward from there. I'm going to return you momentarily here to the original timeline of causal events in which I talk about like bells or something. I don't know. I was going for like a vibe and so innocent back then. Thanks for listening, as always, giving me a shot, and we'll talk again soon in like about, 6-7 seconds. I've been thinking a lot about bridges lately, and bells, and other words that have to do with the letter B. I've been reading The Book of Weird by Barbara Nindy Byfield, and this is a book that goes back pretty much to the days of early D&D. I believe it was originally published in 1973. Many give it credit today for inspiring a lot of what the old school Renaissance or OSR or old school revolution, whatever you want to call it, what that movement kind of has stolen from, you might say, over the years. Anyway, there's an entry on bells in here. It's a big book of lots of esoteric terms, being a most desirable lexicon of the fantastical, as the front cover says. And bells is one of the terms in here. And so what a bell has meant in the past is to a small, say medieval, dark ages, Renaissance, I don't know, to a small village somewhere out in the wilderness, far away, disconnected from other lands and from other villages, from other towns, from other settlements, and how the bell itself was kind of revolutionary. Not a historian, so maybe it wasn't. From my perspective, it was, as maybe the first form of simultaneous mass communication. A bell would be rung, and depending on how many times it was rung, how frequently it was rung, it could mean different things. And just to read a little bit of the entry on bells from the Book of the Weird. Bells sound alarms, break lightning, announce floods and fire, mark the presence of pestilence, ban witches and ghosts, and call to safety, counsels, and pleasure. They toll at death thrice for a man and twice for a woman, summoning mourners. Bells mark the hour of couvre-feu each night, keeping the restless from gossip, late hours, and sedition. The entire ring marks the passing of each old year and welcomes the new in peal upon peal. Bells served a lot of purposes, as it turns out. And this book isn't meant to be a factual retelling of situations. I mean, there's a nice entry about bedbugs right before bells about how bedbugs are like vampires, and maybe that's true too, but it goes on. Bells are gregarious and like the company of other bells. They are subtle when struck, giving out more than one note in undertones and overtones. Bells can, when they please, speak for themselves. They have opinions, and they administer justice by executing the otherwise unpunishable guilty caught in their belfries. Bells have names. They are baptized. Their weights and measurements are kept track of in old records. They have a way of becoming lost, but only to be found again at the bottom of lakes, wells, and abandoned shafts when they are needed. Boy, that is just a call to adventure, wanting to discover an old bell somewhere deep in a ship's hull wrecked upon, I don't know, the coastline. Why was the bell in the ship in the first place? Who knows? Like owls, bells comment. Like elves, they at their best in motion, or when they have disappeared. Who am I? Well, I am the party, as it turns out. When you don't have a party, you need to make your own. And that's what I've done here. This is the first episode. First real episode, I'll say. And my name is Paul. I am attempting something new to myself here, though not new really in the field overall of role-playing games, or podcasts for that matter. I've decided to take it upon myself to try out this model of solo role-playing games. And while I've read quite a bit, mostly on the internet, which is really not the best place to read things, quite a bit on the internet, and then also amongst various publications, I've decided to really make a go of making my own system of the things that I enjoy, the things that I'm most interested in trying out when it comes to a game. I've taken bits and pieces of my favorite game systems, kind of mashed them together, smushed them together, created my own flow of how I could imagine a story going. And really, I'm here to write my own story and discover my own adventures. Really, I have a goal of being able to explore and find out what's in all those dungeons, in all those books that I've bought, all the PDFs that I own. What's inside those? And I could sit down and read them to myself. I could read them out loud to you. I'm not really that interested in that. I want to experience them as best I can. The perspective of those characters that are going in to explore them. I am the party. I bring the party. This will be part actual play podcast, working out my rule set in real time. I have some general ideas. Like I said, I smashed together some mechanics that I'm a fan of. I don't know if they're going to work. I don't know if they're really going to spur on enough of the story, or if I'm going to have to cobble together more, reduce here and there, add stuff that I need to. That's okay though. I'm open to the journey, and I'm trying to design a game while I'm playing it, making sure I just, keep putting the next small portion of the bridge out in front of me before I step my foot into the chasm. I have the scaffolding in place with what I have for a current setup of a system. I'm going to be talking about that a little bit, so it's part actual play podcast, like I mentioned, but also a bit of a game designer's journal, you could say. And I'm not published, but we're all game designers. We've played a game, whether we've ran it or played in it. We've done something that probably leak into the realm of game design. So I have my system here, which, like I said, I'll talk about some more probably in the next episode. But I do also want to talk about tools, because really I could just talk into this microphone the whole time, never roll dice, never look at any resource outside of myself. That's an option, but that's really just improv. And I'm interested in a little bit more than that. Not a lot more, as you'll see with my primitive game system I've developed, but somewhat more of a model of something that's not totally within my control at all times. And so the rules help with that. That's kind of like the game system overall. When I'm looking at what tools I have around me, and there are countless possible tools that you could find on the internet, all I did was go shopping at my own bookshelf, found things that I was interested in, game systems that I've used or just have read through, been really in love with, and have always wanted to give a try. I mentioned the Book of Weird. I said the Weird earlier too. It's just the Book of Weird by Barbara Nindy Byfield, and I apologize if I've mispronounced her name. That's kind of a starting point for me. It's a really interesting book. I mentioned that it has entries alphabetically of lots of weird situations. There's, paging through, there's an entry on friars, on giants, trolls, and ogres, heralds, landscapes, merchants, parchment, and vellum. If you ever read through any OSR book, you probably have seen those things detailed in one way or another. And there's some lovable black and white art in here as well. So that's a fun place for inspiration, and just a place to take me into a different world. So whether or not I use that actually during play, that's its own separate thing. As a general tool and source of inspiration, the Book of Weird is a great place to start. Some other books and what I just consider random resources: the Dungeon Crawl Classics. What is this book called? Reference sheets. Well, that was a lot easier to come up with the name of this than I expected. The Dungeon Crawl Classics Reference Sheets, which is a small booklet developed for the game from Goodman Games. Basically, it's a collection of all of the tables, the crit tables, spell casting, character generation tables, and Dungeon Crawl Classics DCC is great for tables. Just amazing. And I don't know in the moment if I would know where to look in a book. Like, let's say I was trying to find, my wizard in my party is really starting to look pretty haggard. He's starting to look a little corrupted. Would I know to flip to page 40 to look up major corruptions, or 39 for minor corruptions? Not necessarily. But if I'm looking for some ideas, and I'm like, hey, I'm a little stuck in the story, or there's a weird thing happening in this dungeon room, where should I look? Like most of my resources I'm going to talk about here, I'm just going to open to a random page at times and see what the reference is, see what the table is, and if it makes sense to roll on it, I'll roll on it and see if I can get some inspiration that way. So that's a big one that I'm very happy to have. It's a very inexpensive book too. I think it's like $10. And again, that was the Dungeon Crawl Classics RPG Reference Sheets. keep going in the Dungeon Crawl Classics vein. I have one of the, I think it was a print-on-demand collection of the Gong Farmer's Almanac. It's the 2015, I think it was the first volume. It's a free and unofficial zine for DCC RPG. So yeah, 2015's Gong Farmer's Almanac compilation, I believe is mostly drawn from the now defunct Google Plus DCC group. But there's a bunch of random stuff in here too. There's whole subsystems for DCC, but there's also like tiny adventures, tombs, this list of, what is this? Rules, rumors, and campaign seeds. That's nice. List of other miscellany PC classes, which there's more here than you would expect. So there's like a lot of really interesting things in this book. And again, this is a great, like, I don't know, let's turn... Well, these page numbers are not going to help you very much. Let's turn to the middle of the book and see geographic points of interest. The Fang, originally constructed as an impenetrable fortress to guard the pass. It was designed to house the loyal officers to control the original pass from above and below. Now occupied by the Demi-Lich, the tower above hangs from the rock formations, while the overreaching Butte Keep lies below. Boom. You got a little adventure site just right in the middle of this book. Popped it open, now you're cooking. So this is going to be a resource. It's rather large. Again, don't know how many pages it is exactly, but it is quite a few. It's a funny little hardcover book, basically. I'll say one of the two main systems that my cobbled together solo RPG system comes from is the Black Hack 2nd Edition. I've been a huge fan of this little game book since I've gotten into OSR, and this is developed by David Black, Black Label Games, it looks like. And I printed out a bunch of player aids from this too, because there's so many pages. This book is really simple OSR system based on older D&D rules, but really fantastic collection of tables. There's a What's on the Corpse die drop table where you just drop a d6 on the table, and if you roll a 5 or a 6 wherever it landed, maybe there's poison crackers or a sentient tattoo on the creature. Maybe there's a golden goose egg or at least list of names. Things like that are all over this book. There's even a dungeon generator, which could be useful. So it's a lot of stuff for GMs, but will also obviously carry over for solo GM, or solo role-playing, excuse me. And then the creatures themselves, there's a pretty good bestiary at the back of the book. And they're all really simple. They're simple to the level of where I'm kind of planning that if I need to convert, if I'm running like a Dungeon Crawl Classic adventure, if I need to convert the creatures in the dungeon to my system, they'll look probably a lot like the Black Hack's creatures as well. And I should mention too that the Black Hack has... one of the main game mechanics, which is the usage die, which I've kind of adapted to utilize for my characters, like approaches, stats, skill sets, that kind of thing. More to come on that in the future. And then right now, the last main thing that I have is I just received the King in Yellow Tarot deck from the Delta Green Kickstarter. I believe it's from the Delta Green Kickstarter from Arc Dream Publishing. I've never owned a tarot deck before. Tarot decks are quite popular in the solo RPG world. Probably because they act as a really interesting, somewhat abstract oracle, or a means with which to give yourself some inspiration or some direction when you're not quite sure where to go, or you don't want to be the one that's deciding something interesting that's going to happen in a scene. The King in Yellow Tarot deck has the joy of part of the characters, or part of the cards, I should say. A good number of them are written in French, so I won't be able to pronounce them, as you might have guessed from my earlier attempt to pronounce something in French. But I just drew the top card off the deck. It has the number 5. There's 5 gold coins, and it looks to be a beggar in a yellow cloak sitting on a red blanket in a yellow landscape, and the beggar is shielding his or her eyes. And that's all that I've got. And I may be reading, it might not be a beggar at all. It might be a king who's lost his kingdom, or it might be a king who's been left alone, or so beyond riches and fortune that like they don't even care about this stuff anymore. But that's going to give me some direction, I guess, if I needed it. I'm going to go to the middle of the deck, Chevalier de Bâton, which I'm going to say is the Scepter Knight of Scepters, maybe? I don't know. Again, I'm not a big tarot guy. It looks like the knight is digging, an armored knight is digging, using like a king's scepter, digging a hole in the ground, which is another interesting concept. So these things are fun, oddball, extra things that I can pull out and throw in my game at a moment's notice. All of these things are just kind of sitting around me. They're just kind of my ephemeral to look for inspiration. And my plan for the show itself is to start off by picking a Dungeon Crawl Classics adventure. As I mentioned, I've got a lot of them. I've participated in the Humble bundles, the bundles of holding for Dungeon Call Classics. They've come up. So I've pretty much own all of the adventures, at least through like number 100 in a PDF form. So I have a lot to choose from. And I'm going to pick a shorter one. Just not quite sure yet which one to go with. It's something that prioritizes it being an adventure that I haven't played or really read through yet, because I do still want to like discover a little bit about it as we go. That's the plan. So that's what's coming down the pipeline. I think that's it. I think that's what I got for the first episode. Appreciate you listening, and we'll talk again soon.